In the previous video, I talked almost exclusively about passwords, and I mentioned a challenge in there for you. So I've created a synopsis that goes over it a little bit more. This is Deontay Estu, and he's had not great passwords for a while. In fact, he's just had one password that he's used for all of his websites, and it's been Spider-Man fan, ! With the S at the start capital, because he knows you should have a capital in there, and some numbers in there, because he knows you should have numbers, and of course the exclamation point for a special symbol. But this is obviously not a good password. It might look clever, but anyone who's trying to crack passwords knows about replacing letters with numbers that look similar to them. They know about including a special character or two. They know about throwing a capital in. Even taking his Spider-Man fan and shifting it over on the keyboard, he's found out is not a great idea because they know about that trick too. You really need a pretty good algorithm to go from having a bad password to an actual good one. Those techniques might make yours less bad, and it might keep you off the 25 worst password list, but that's only making you better than a couple % of the population. He wants a good one, and he wants you to design it for him. Now, he has two different email addresses, or rather, it redirects to his other email address. And he's used his newer address, the d.estu@net.ukmail, for the past couple years, and he's using that as his login for filecloud.io, github.com, and khanacademy.org. He's had his LinkedIn and his net.mail accounts for quite a bit longer, and those are associated with his original email address, estu.deontay@net.mail. Now, the algorithm that you design for him can't be too extreme because he has to be able to remember it, right? So if you're hitting 7 or more steps, that starts to get a little difficult for someone to actually remember. So your task is to design one algorithm that can be used to create unique passwords for the different sites that he uses that a nefarious entity can't crack. And we're going to simulate that by generating the 5 passwords for those 5 different sites that he uses, and then giving those passwords and a list of the sites to a friend or peer and seeing if they can figure out which is which. If you've designed a good algorithm, they should be able to figure out which one goes to what. If they are able to figure it out, talk to them about how did they figure it out, what gave it away, and see if you can design a better one. So a few tips and suggestions. Avoid some common mistakes. A lot of people will put part of the website name into their password itself, and that's not a great idea. So, you wouldn't want something like Deontay Cloud for his FileCloud account. That's pretty obvious, right? You wouldn't want estu.mail as his password for his netmail account. The other thing is you don't want it to be too short either. Keep in mind that passwords typically need to be at least 8 characters for a site to accept it, but even that isn't that great. 12 or more is probably pretty good. If you want a really good one, which I think he does, maybe 13 or 14, 15 or so. So the next thing is to use variables. So if they're going to be different, then you need something that changes from one to the other. And those variables should be part of the rules, because otherwise you're having different algorithms, not the same one. So maybe you're doing things like using the first vowel, or using the last consonant, or taking something from the type of domain, like whether it's a .io or a .com or whatever. Maybe part of it comes from the username. Maybe you're counting the number of consonants in the URL or the number of vowels, and that's somehow included in there. There's lots of different things you can do with it. You can also transform the data too. Now, I mentioned in the previous video, looking at the keyboard and shifting everything up or down or to the left or whatever, and that helps a little bit, but on its own it's not great. But you can still do that to some extent for part of it if you wanted to. You could also transform it a little bit differently too. So, if we want to include the first letter from the domain in there, but we don't want it to be obvious, maybe you do something like you use a color. So you divide the alphabet into 6 and use a primary color for each one. So if that letter is between A and F, it's red. If it's between G and L, it's yellow. And you just keep going. There's different things that you can do with this. So be creative. Think about different variables that can change it up, and think about how you can transform some of that data so it's not obvious what those variables are or how they correspond to the password. And if what you create is too easy, try again. Look into why was it crackable and how can you design a better one. So I hope that helped you think about things. In the next video, we'll actually start using Python. We'll do a quick hello world, and I'll show you how to run it on a couple different setups, so whether you're on Mac, PC, or on some sort of mobile device.